I want to give you a piece of news, and I can give you the reports, or you can look them up on your own. Advancing Digital Agency, the power of data intermediaries, and digital ID framework that the WEF has published. Okay, so we have two reports, and it's really exciting from the World Economic Forum. Listen to this. Well, let me start with this. I have been trying to keep my extended family in the loop, and I have found two things that have happened. One, and it may be because, I don't couch things. One is everybody is either overreacting and like, oh my gosh, my hair is on fire today. And no, you just have to do things to prepare for a new world. The other reaction is, this is crazy. There's no way this is going to happen. No way these things could happen. It's a fantasy. Well, it was a fantasy in 2016 that Donald Trump would be our president. It was a fantasy to have a president sitting on the pot, making jokes and torching people on Twitter. But it happened. It's a fantasy that we would have 40-year high inflation rate like this because the Fed printed and gave away about $100 trillion. It's a fantasy just last week that we would be talking about nuclear war. So don't tell me it's beyond the realm of possibilities. I don't see anything. Let me remind you, 2 years ago, the Pentagon, and if you've not heard this yet, look it up. The Pentagon came out and said, yep, there's some sort of alien life form, and we've got one of their ships, or at least pieces of it. So I'm not really surprised by anything anymore. Now, for those who think the Great Reset is not going to control every aspect of your life, let me give you a couple of things. They are now taking the next step to shape global, regional, and industry agendas, end quote, with a new digital ID system. Under the framework, the WEF proposes collecting data from many aspects of people's everyday lives. That's a quote. Through their devices, telecommunication networks, and third-party service providers. The WEF suggests that this data collection dragnet would allow a digital ID. Now listen to this. It's very narrow. It would allow a digital ID to scoop up data on people's online behavior, purchase history, network usage, credit history, biometrics, names, national identity numbers, and medical history. Plus your travel history, social accounts, e-government accounts, bank accounts, energy uses, health stats, education, and I love this one, and more. What's left? Once the digital ID has access to this huge, highly personal set of data, the WEF proposes using it to decide whether users are allowed to, quote, own and use devices, quote, open bank accounts, quote, carry out online financial transactions, quote, conduct business transaction, quote, access insurance and treatment, book trips, still quoting, go through border control between countries or regions, still quoting, access third-party services that rely on social media logins, file taxes, vote, collect benefits, end quote. So, that passport that they gave you, it was so crazy to think that maybe that COVID passport might grow into something, exactly like this. In this Advancing Digital Agency, the Power of Data Intermediaries report, the WEF positions this digital ID framework as part of the solution to a trust gap in data sharing, and notes that vaccine passports, which were mandated across the world during COVID-19, do, by nature, serve as a form of digital identity. The WEF also praises the way vaccine passports have allowed governments to harvest data from their populations, I'm quoting, without notice or consent. Oh, I love that when our government does that, don't you? Quoting, at a collective level, vaccine data is incredible public health asset. The United Kingdom's government in particular has acknowledged this and has suggested that they would anonymize it, and data shield techniques that could be harnessed in controlled environments to allow for the reuse of that highly sensitive data. In such cases, notice and consent is not required per se for the reuse of data, but the intermediary processes the data undergoes must be done in a controlled environment so that the findings of the data set are made available rather than the data itself. Who's going to protect us? Additionally, the WEF provides a specific example of how digital IDs could be used to authenticate a user by using fingerprints, a password, or identity verification technology, and decide whether they should be granted, I'm quoting, access to a bank loan by judging their profile, which may include biometrics, name, national identity number, and history, which may include credit, medical, and online purchasing history. The WEF goes on to suggest that digital IDs will allow for the selection of preferences and making of certain choices in advance, and ultimately pave the way for automated decision-making, where a trusted digital assistant automates permissions for people and effectively manages their data across different services to overcome the limitations of notice and consent. This is great. They're also talking about turning your heartbeat into a digital ID. And governments and private corporations increasingly embracing digital IDs. Some governments are also pushing a similar notion, social credit style apps that monitor citizens' behavior and reward them for engaging in state-approved actions. Okay. All right. Now, let me just throw this on the fire for you. One of the most widely used services to check the creditworthiness of individuals and small businesses is FICO, F-I-C-O, right? Banks, credit unions, they examine your application for a loan. FICO is often the first place that they turn. When customers look up their credit score, they're usually talking about their FICO score. Now, we've suspected for quite a while that ESG scores, which are kind of a social credit score, similar to the ones that they're using in China, could someday soon be tied with personal credit scores, so that a low ESG score could cause your personal credit score to drop and your access to loans and mortgages along with it. But it's rare to see even the staunchest ESG supporter openly admit something like that. However, let's go to FICO's website in a little piece titled Lending Predictions of 2022. From BNPL to ESG and more, in which a FICO senior principal consultant seems to suggest he believes in 2022, ESG could be directly linked to personal and small business credit scores. This is crazy. This will never happen. It is happening. What you're seeing happen to Russia right now, and praise Allah, it's happening. I am all for the sanctioning of Russia, but the way they're cutting them off in all ways will be used against you unless you fall in line. You can't wait for people to buy into this, because some people will just wait and wait and wait, and it'll be too late. Find the people who will do their own homework. Let me give you this. The Secretary General of the United Nations just said, turning this ship around, meaning the world, will take immense willpower and ingenuity from governments and business alike in every major emitting nation. You're going to see tonight, with the State of the Union, Joe Biden trying to make a case for green energy. Listen to this quote. A key focus of my administration will be the revitalization of Japan through, and I'm quoting, a new form of capitalism. He said the time has come for historic economic and social transformations, and that Japan will pioneer a new form of public-private partnership with leaders of government, industry, and labor all working together to shift policies into a new form of capitalism. That's the Prime Minister of Japan. I'm going to tell you where this is stumbling in our states and where this is gaining ground. So a state bill proposed in Arizona meant to restrict the use of ESG scores by banks and other financial institutions was recently voted down in the House of Representatives, and not voted down because of Democrats, but because of a few Republicans who voted against the bill. Most Republicans voted in favor. The bill is House Bill 2656. A motion to reconsider has passed, so the House is going to vote on the bill again, possibly as early as this week. Here's what the Republicans who voted against the bill said. They said, it's not needed, financial institutions, they can use whatever they want. I mean, they're just a private corporation. And, they use ESG to target individuals and small businesses. It's not true. I mean, we've called people like BlackRock. We've called the heads of corporations. We've called the big banks, all promising to use ESG or other metrics to transform society and reset capitalism. But there's no examples of this happening. Why would they build it if they weren't going to use it? Let me point out the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. It claims over 450 financial firms, 45 countries, including Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo and Company. They have promised to remove from its portfolios and business practices anyone who isn't willing to go along with the net zero goals. The total assets under management owned by the Glasgow Financial Alliance is $130 trillion. That means if you want to buy a house, a car, a boat, or anything else that is somewhat related to fossil fuels over the next couple of decades, you're going to be affected by this group. You're also going to need to play by their rules, or you're not going to get a mortgage, a car loan, a business loan. We have tons of examples in the book, which, by the way, is available in bookstores again right now. Grab your copy of The Great Reset. It's available in stores right now. Find a copy of The Great Reset by me. Time is running out in Arizona for HB 2656 to pass. Again, it's not the Democrats. It's the unbelievably blind Republicans. Most Republicans are for it. A few are not. Please call your House members and make sure they understand. What, you're going to call the bank? It's like calling Jesse James. Hey, are you really robbing places? What is he going to say? For the love of Pete. All right.
You have to do is ask. Whenever you have an issue where you're criticizing someone, if you just ask them, is this criticism true? You always get a true answer.
Right.
You get the real story. Yeah. That's how you do it.
2 years ago, they said, no, there's no such thing as ESG. We're not going to have those at all. Then it was, yeah, we're doing ESG, but we're only making it available for, our customers, their ease. Really? So you're spending literally hundreds of millions of dollars as a bank just to help people make decisions.
And I that is an actually laudable goal, right? I would like to buy something that backed my views, right?
Exactly right.
Do they offer me that?
No.
No, they don't. They only offer me the ESG approved things. And look, if you are an environmentalist and you want to invest in things that don't have fossil fuels or whatever, okay, you should be able to find a fund that does something like that.
Sure.
You should.
And if you don't want it to go to Planned Parenthood, you don't want critical race theory, CRT, then you should be able to do that too. But they don't make it that way.
No.
They don't make it that way. And by the way, what they said they wouldn't do, they have done. And then when we called them again and said, yeah, but you're going to apply this to small loans. No, we're not. They just signed the agreement to do it. The big banks in America. So I'm sorry, you don't have any credibility with me.
None.
If you want all of the information and you want the footnotes so you can see it for yourself, please just get the new book. The last, 50 pages are all fine print footnotes, all original sources. This is not my opinion. This is what they say they're going to do. And by the way, what do you suppose that new form of capitalism is that Japan's going to roll out? What do you suppose that is? It's public-private partnerships. That's what it is. It's not capitalism. It is fascism. It is run, and everybody is kept in place by ESG. If there's another new form of capitalism, I'd love to hear about it. But seeing that he's telling the WEF about it, I'm pretty sure it's the same one, therefore.
I've got another form of capitalism we should try. It's called capitalism. What if we go back to that and attempt to use that every once in a while? It seemed to work well for a while. Why not try it again?